This is Mark McNeese, and you're listening to One Thing or Another, Interviews and Conversations. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. This is your host, Mark McNeese here. And today I have a returning guest, and he's on for a specific reason because we have worked together again. It's Sean Rhead, audiobook narrator, and lots of other things. But Sean's been in the narration business for the past 2 years and currently has over 20 titles available for download on Audible. I guess that would be 21 now with mine. His favorite genres to narrate are fantasy and mystery, but there is no genre he wouldn't like to take on. When Sean is not narrating, he spends his time teaching music to the younger generation, singing musical theater songs, which I like on TikTok. I like a lot of your TikTok videos, and duetting sea shanties on TikTok. There, I just got ahead of myself. But you're a proud ally of the BIPOC, BIPOC, and LGBTQ plus communities. You have a great voice. Good to have you back on, Sean. How are you?
Thank you, very much, Mark. It's very, very good to be back. I'm doing really, really well. We were talking before we officially got started. It's Labor Day, so I've got an extra day off, and it's exactly what we all need right now.
An extra day off?
Yes.
Or a day to honor America's labor.
That too.
You know, that's nowadays, any 3-day holiday now is, you know, for an awful lot of people, it's just like a day off and let's party. At least it used to be before the pandemic. But I'm going to add that in there because labor, thanks to labor, we have a 5-day work week and we have all kinds of things that we take for granted. And it all came from the unions and the labor movement. So, you know, that's a little sidetrack there.
No, absolutely. Very important to be said.
And I also understand that you were recently engaged.
Yes, I am happily engaged to my fiancée, Caitlin. We've been together for going on 5 years this coming September. And we took a weekend in Orlando and we decided to make it official.
Did you go? I was going to say Disney World. Did you go to Disney World? That's not why you went to Orlando.
No, we went to Universal Studios, actually.
Ah, okay. Next best thing. Or better,
yes.
depending on your preferences. And you're in Chicago. I want to tell people that.
Yes.
Yes. Well, the last time we did a podcast, I'm sure I mentioned that I grew up near there, and I knew Chicago quite well at one time. It's been a long time, just like I know L.A. really well, but I haven't lived there for almost 30 years. Now, today we're going to talk about an audiobook that you did. It's mine. No evasion there. It's called Reservation for Murder. It's the 6th book in the Kyle Callahan Mystery series. And you had done my book, Beautiful Corpse, a Marshall James thriller, and I thought you did a great job. I loved your voice. I loved your professionalism and just everything about it. And I thought, if I'm going to do this as an audiobook, I want Sean to do this. So we entered into an agreement, and you narrated it, and it's done now. So this is my form of advertisement, along with any other way that I can get the word out. But it's a great book, and that's what I want to have you on and talk to you about. So I hope you're prepared for that.
Absolutely.
Now it's our second book together, like I mentioned. Because I'm also interested. I've always been interested in the process. I've tried narrating some of my own things, you know, not to put out there as audiobooks, but just for the experience. I find it to be a very big learning curve for me. How do you actually go about preparing for and recording an audiobook?
Well, it very much is a learning curve, especially if you're one of the many, many narrators who is working from their own home studio, because there are a lot of technical things that you have to learn if you don't know already. But the first thing I like to do is always read the full manuscript and kind of plan out what each character's motivation is, how I'm going to accurately depict each character. And I find that's especially important in the mystery genre, because obviously in mystery there's a lot of information that is revealed and a lot that is kept under the rug to be revealed later. Mm-hmm. So those motivations have to be very clear and understood before any recording takes place. So I like to read it in full and plan things out. And then my actual recording sessions, depending on how much time I have in the day, they can range between 1.5 hours to 3 hours in the booth. And that can amount to about half that time in finished audio once you're done editing. Especially for me, since I do very continuous takes. Depending on what narrator you ask, everyone has a slightly different approach. Some like to stop and start because mistakes are going to happen. You're going to stumble over your words. There's going to be an external noise interrupting your recording. And so there have to be ways to work around that. Some stop and start. I just continue to go, and I make an audible sound into the microphone to create a spike in my sound waves, which visibly point out all the takes that I want to remove. So that can amount to a very, very long audio file that I have to trim down. And so the editing process, for that reason, for me, is probably the longer of the two between the recording and the editing. But yeah, I like to read it first, then I go into the recording booth, and then also, depending on how much time I have in the day, my editing sessions can be anywhere between 2 hours and probably the whole day, depending on how much work I plan to do.
That's interesting, because I was going to ask you if you, a lot of narrators outsource their editing, but you do your own editing.
Yes.
Good. It saves you that third-party person. And I understand about the sounds, because when I was doing just my short stories that I was recording, I would clap if I made a mistake, or if I needed to, if I knew I needed to go back to that, I would clap. Another question I have, because I'm interested in process for the moment, is do you like edit down each session at a time, or might you have a few, and then go back and do them? If that makes any sense.
Like, would I go back and redo something once it's already?
No, I mean, like, if I say I recorded part of a short story for a half an hour this morning or some other morning. When I was first started doing it, anytime I stopped, I would go back and edit that file, as opposed to maybe having 2 or 3 files that would make a continuous narration. And
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I
was afraid that I would forget where I made it, where I needed to edit, so I would do it as soon as I was done recording it.
I think it depends on what exactly it is that I want to edit. Usually, I leave all the takes, effective and ineffective, in the file until I actually sit down and put the whole thing together. But if I discover later down the line that I mispronounced a word or something, then that's something that I like to go back and resolve as soon as possible. So in those rare circumstances, I do go back earlier in the session and amend that, but usually I leave it all to the end.
And you're listening to everything you record again, because that's also where you might discover that you mispronounced something, or you skipped a word or something like that. So you're listening to each file multiple times.
Yeah. You get used to the sound of your own voice very quickly.
Yeah. Now, before I ask you about Reservation for Murder and why, what you liked about it, what do you think? What are some of the things that make a good narrator? In your opinion.
Well, a lot of people go into the narration business because somebody tells them they have a really, really good voice, and I don't necessarily think that's the I don't think that's the be all end all. I don't think having a certain type of voice hurts in any way, but really, in my opinion, to be a good narrator, all you really have to do is just be able to convey a story. You have to be engaging. You have to be invested in the material. It definitely helps to have certain a variety of voices to be able to distinguish between the characters, and just to make it not just a reading, but an experience is how I would describe it. My two favorite narrators of all time are Jim Dale, who narrated the Harry Potter books, which I grew up on, and Michael Page, who narrates my current favorite ongoing series, The Gentleman Bastards, the first of which is The Lies of Locke Lamora. Both of those narrators are so obviously very much invested in the material. The voices they do are incredibly distinct and unique and engaging, and I'm just hooked on their every word. So I think to be able to keep a listener engaged, whatever voice you have and whatever your approach to doing that is, that to me is the most important thing.
Okay, I'm going to just put in just something here about what I like about narrators. Is that for me, I like it somewhere between reading it well, just read the book well, because sometimes and distinguishing the characters, but not overdoing it. Like there are some narrators who it's almost cartoonish with like these voices. They seem to be more intent on, like they want to be Mel. Who used to do Looney Tunes? But I want to hear the book. I don't want to be necessarily experience this particular narrator person. I want both. I want the book, but I don't want like these over the top voices. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. And I think it's a very common thing to ask yourself, okay, what voice am I going to give this character? But I think that's the wrong question to ask. I think what we should be asking is, who are these characters? What motivates them? And what is a day in their life? Like get down to who they are as a person, and then the voice should come after or with it. Like the voice shouldn't be the priority.
Yes, and I guess a quicker way to say what I just said is that I'm not a fan of exaggeration.
Sure.
Now, you said something a while ago that was fascinating to me, because I know that you narrators read the book first, hopefully. I think they all do. But you had said that you read it also to understand the motivation for something that happens earlier in the book, especially with murder mysteries. That never occurred to me. That because I wrote it, I know what the motivations are. I don't have to. I know exactly where it's going, and I didn't think that someone who's never read this and is going to perform it would benefit from understanding why a character does something earlier in the book. That's a real insight for me. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. It's in that aspect, it's really not any different from acting. You're embodying a character. You're becoming a character, and in order to become that character, you have to understand what is going on inside that character's head. And obviously, in murder mysteries, especially, a lot of characters have a lot to hide, so they're keeping a lot in. And there's a lot of tension for those characters, and I feel like that definitely does have to come across.
Yes, thanks. I always want to. Dialogue is the illusion of conversation. I learned that years ago, and it's always been very important to me, because some people can. Sounds like it's off the subject, but some people can write good dialogue, and some people don't. And a key to that is that it's an illusion. Dialogue is not conversation. It's not you and I talking at the grocery store. It's the illusion of conversation. Now, with Reservation for Murder, a Kyle Callahan mystery, I'm holding it up. Oh, there I am. In case I put the video up, I'm recording this video because it all is the same thing. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to use the video, but if I use the video, there's the book. It's Reservation for Murder, Kyle Callahan Mystery. I just want to tell people a little bit about it in case they're not familiar with this series. It's an older couple, Kyle Callahan and his now husband, Danny Durbin. In the first book, Murder at Pride Lodge, they weren't married yet. But I had decided 10 years ago when I started this website for LGBTQ people over 50. It's still going, lgbtsr.com. But at the same time, I wanted to write a murder mystery, which I'd never done. And Frank and I, my husband and I, went to a resort in the Poconos called Rainbow Mountain. It's still there. We still go. And I thought this would be a great place to set a murder mystery. So I did. I changed the name. I moved it to New Hope, Pennsylvania. I told the proprietor that I was doing it. He was happy about that. So, anyways, they're now in their 60s. I wanted to write characters that reflected me. There's an entire dozen conversations to be had with other people other than you about what has happened to gay mysteries, and now it's all MM mysteries, and they all have hot white torsos on the cover, and I don't do that. I come from a literary fiction background, and I wanted to write characters that reflected my life. So Kyle and Danny are now in their 60s. In this 6th book, they moved to Lambertville, New Jersey. By the way, they just had really bad flooding. I don't know if that's been on the news, but Lambertville, I love Lambertville. We can't even get there right now because there's a closed bridge in Stockton, and it's a mess. But the folks in Lambertville have undergone, pretty traumatic weather event last week. But all of my characters moved there when Frank and I left New York City, and they opened a bed and breakfast, and there's a writers conference in town that allows me to poke little holes in writers' egos, and murder checks in. I had a lot of fun writing it. What did you liked the book? I hope, because you narrated it.
Yes.
And are there things about the book that you liked narrating or that you liked reading?
Yeah, a lot of things actually. Well, so as you mentioned before, Beautiful Corpse was the first one that I had done with you, and that was more of a thriller than a murder mystery. What I really liked was the contrast between the two protagonists. Marshall James was someone who just wound up in a really bad situation and wanted to get out of it as quickly as possible to get back to a normal life. Kyle Callahan, what I really loved about him was how much he's just itching to get back into the mystery solving business. He's got such a drive for it, despite the fact that it's something that he knows he probably should stay out of, but he can't help it. He's curious. He lives for that stuff. And so that was really, really interesting to me and really fun to follow, because I think we can definitely relate to some degree, wanting to jump into something that, again, we probably should stay out of. For me, it's arguing with bigots on Facebook. But
yeah. Oh, yeah, and you engage with them, I'm guessing.
Very much so. People tell me you probably should stay out of it. No, I can't help it. I love that, just like Kyle loves solving mysteries.
Well, and I appreciate your views on Facebook, because Facebook is such a it had such a silencing effect on a lot of people, because I don't want to offend my conservative family and and everybody just wants to put, unless you're part of some virulent group, and there's lots of those, but people don't want to they just don't want to go there on Facebook, at least a lot of times, and there's things I have to say. Man, so nowadays I don't say them as often since the last election, because my biggest wish came true, and we have a new president. What are you up to now?
So I'm working on 2 audiobooks at the moment. One has been in the works for some time, that is called The Other Side by Justin J. Gladstone, which is the first in a sci-fi fantasy mystery series about a multiverse. So I'll definitely be updating all my social medias on the progress of that, in addition to some upcoming theatrical auditions, which remain to be seen. And aside from that, I'm pretty much doing the same thing that I have been doing. I'm teaching general music. I'll be recording TikToks when I have the time, and wedding planning over the next year and a half.
I was going to say, when is it? Year and a half from now?
Yeah, we're looking at March of 2023.
Well, hopefully, we won't be quite as much into this pandemic stuff, but I'm all bets are off. All bets are off. Now, how can people find you? And then I'll mention where they can find the audiobook.
Yes. So I am on Instagram at Sean_Rhead, all lowercase letters. And my TikTok is the same username, at Sean_Rhead. And I also have a YouTube channel, which my TikTok should link you to in my bio, on which I post some of my TikToks, some song covers, and some voice impression videos. My initial audiobook narration demo, as I was first getting into the business, is also on there. So just a variety of stuff. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok.
And for any authors who hear this and go, wow, he's got a voice for audiobook narration.
Thank you.
Because you really do.
Thank you.
They can just go to, hopefully they're going to know what ACX is or Findaway Voices and search for you, and they will find you and proceed from there. Now the audiobook, the book Reservation for Murder, it's on Amazon, ebook, paperback. That's been out for, I think, since late last year, and it's done really well. And the audiobook just came out. It's on Audible, also on Amazon. It's on. You can get it at a lot of retailers because Findaway Voices is a distributor. It's not a retailer, but you can find it on Chirp and iTunes and Walmart, libraries also, which is a good thing. I like that about them. And then also, if they would want to get it for $2 less, just go to markmcnease.com, markmcnease.com, and they'll see a storefront widget on the right that will take you to Authors Direct. You have to use the Authors Direct app to listen to them, but it's a great way to get less expensive audiobooks. And I hope it catches on a lot more because not everybody wants to deal with ACX for sure from our end of it, and a lot of audiobook listeners are, they don't want to be corralled into Audible and Amazon. So anyways, Sean, I'm going to thank you again for coming on a second time and talking about my book. It's really always such a good time to talk to you.
Likewise, Mark. Thank you for having me. It's always wonderful to talk to you.
Yeah, and I will look for more of your inflammatory comments on Facebook.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
All right. You have a good day.
Thank you, Mark. You too.
Bye. This is Mark McNeese, and you've been listening to One Thing or Another, Interviews and Conversations.